You're going to have to better that, Jim.
Right.
No pressure.
No, I'm just trying to get a placeholder and ask you a question.
Oh, right.
Don't you? No, I'm actually not going to do that anymore because it's distracting to our visitors.
Sorry, I have a legitimate question. But
Yes, you can wait till he's made his presentation. Thank you, Jim.
Right, thank you. I've got Andrew Washington with me, Senior Investment Advisor. He knows the detail because he's got money. So I'm just going to congratulate you on the work you've done to date with your transport planning. We appreciate that you're under difficult fiscal pressures and trying to balance rates with all your other priorities, including transport's not easy. I guess since you did your long-term plan and we've written this letter, two things have happened. One, the draft policy statement from the government's come out, which signals quite a significant shift in terms of how we all are being challenged to think about transport. And I think from a council perspective, you're probably very comfortable with it because it's actually taking a broader systems view than a state highway efficiency perspective. And all of the activity classes are going up, except for state highway improvements, which is going down in order to balance the up on the other side. But critically for the region and opportunity for the city is the rapid transport activity class and also transitional rail. And I think the extra amount of money in public transport as well is going to be of assistance. The critical thing here is that we've suggested in our written submission there's a couple of priorities that a couple of bus priorities that you've moved out, Kilmore Street, Salisbury Street, and Lincoln Road, and we've asked if you could potentially bring them forward. You may not be in a position to do that in the next couple of months, but if we keep working with you, and the government has signalled GPS 2, which will be more of a fundamental look, but there's also the opportunity to vary the regional transport plan with the support of partners. And you sit around the Greater Christchurch Public Transport Committee. They've got to do a PT's Futures piece of work and then drop that down into the network. So it seems to me that those questions we raised in our letter might be best addressed through that forum in the broader context of what do we really need to do to turn on buses and get more people on them, which is more than just the infrastructure, it's also the whole of the system. So having said that, we support the work you're doing around Accessible City. That is part of the systems change, and it's also totally consistent with the GPS, which is genuinely asking us as transport people to give each of the modes a fair choice, which means walking, cycling, buses, using a vehicle, using trains, coastal shipping, etc. Mode neutral planning is the jargon words that are used, but it does mean we need to respond to that. Accessible City does have a hierarchy in it. It does have the walkways, it does have the cycleways, it does have the public transport routes and of course the vehicles. And implementing those sorts of changes are not easy. And we've supported you in your endeavours to date and will continue to do so. Because it is different for a lot of people to make genuine choice when they've never been exposed to it. And I have a feeling that we've all underdone the work needed in travel demand management. And that's something you may want to look at. I think you've got 1.5 staff members committed to it. And yet, if we want people to take up new opportunities around cycling and bus transport and so on, to be quite honest, you have to take them to the well for them to understand that. We know from work that's been done with various businesses and moving back into the CBD that if genuine travel planning, including identifying cycling, walking, bus opportunities is put in, then you can get 20 to 30% shift in behaviour, which means that's a lot less people in cars, which means the infrastructure money can go somewhere else. So we support you in your endeavours and I guess look forward to working with you further in those areas. There's a very strong emphasis on safety under the new government policy statement. Andrew might want to comment, but my understanding is your plan already has a pretty fair emphasis in your transport program for safety, so that's really good. And the other one that we've raised is, I guess, better joining up with major transport or travel producers, i.e. education, and I guess you could put DHB in there as well. Because schools have intrigued me. They've tended to be a solo operator without reference to us. We've been building relationships with them and we've been building relationships with your staff and them as well.
Yanni won't believe it.
And essentially every high school and every primary school should have a travel plan with it, which is linked to cycleways and all the rest of the story I've been talking about.
Yeah,
And yet
yeah.
we've been crap at it in plain English, and there's really no excuse because that's just officer time and my time and Andrew's time. So to sum up, we support you in your endeavours. We know money's tight. We think there's some more opportunities there. We've got to make sure Christchurch and the South Island gets their fair share of that. That rapid transit activity class, as I hear it, is in the first decade, Auckland gets the first slice, then Wellington, and then Christchurch kind of at the end of the decade. I don't think that's the right answer, but we're going to need to work together on that to make sure we can put up some compelling cases to government to get funding. That's what I hear, and I'm well placed to hear it, so
Yep.
I'm being open with you on that. Do you want to add anything at this point?
No, you've summed it up pretty good there, Jim.
Okay.
Very good. Well, Vicky, Yanni,
A few
Glenn,
things,
Dion,
So,
Mike.
great to see the innovation unit at NZTA and some of the intriguing things that they are doing. I'm assuming that whole different approach will apply to the whole organisation. So just in terms of a couple of things, demand management, we're actually funding that from the Innovation Fund at the moment, but will you guys be funding any of that?
We would look to co-fund that investment with
Would
the
you?
appropriate business case to support that investment. Yes.
Right, so if we're putting some in, you'd look to co-fund that?
Yes, absolutely. There was a business case that was started last year that just needs to be completed, and we would look to co-fund what's been proposed within that investment proposal.
Cool. And the enhanced usage, the speed limits on what were rural roads but it now become urban roads, I'm assuming it's going to be much easier to get that past the NZTA in terms of reducing those speed limits?
As we sit here today, the system for rule setting hasn't changed. It is on the agenda of the Associate Minister of Transport and our agenda to simplify that process because it requires 2 or 3 steps and 2 or 3 rounds of consultation.
Yes.
So we hear you on that one, and there is work being done to try and simplify the process.
So do you have a sense of when that will become easier, and will it be easier also to have 30k zones within residential areas?
In terms of timing, I would hope by the end of the year, but I'd need to check that and confirm that back to you.
Okay. And rapid transit for Christchurch, is there such a thing?
Yes, there is. And the Public Transport Futures work, which is going through that joint Public Transport Committee, is looking at a 30-year picture of how you can move more people around on public transport. And certain corridors like Riccarton Road and so on lend themselves to frequent bus services or some other form of
Not right now,
mass
they
transit.
don't.
Well, light rail, high-frequency buses are all part of rapid transit. Rapid transit is the ability to move, say, 4,000 people an hour on public vehicles, if you think of that. Gondolas can do that, believe it or not, large-scale gondolas, and they're used overseas for those purposes. We tend to see them just as recreational tools. So definition of rapid transit is a lot of people moving quickly through defined corridors.
Yep. Sorry, who was next? Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. The NZTA Ministry of Education, you say you'd welcome the development of improvement of the transport links to schools. Are you sort of welcoming us paying for that? Or have you now got the ability to actually take a much more holistic approach with Ministry of Ed and get it funded through central government?
Well, I think there's 2 things there. There's the planning side, which is when schools are going in or being rebuilt or joined together, then thinking from day one about how the pupil is going to get there and the teachers and the networks, plural, that go with that. That's what we're asking to be done in the front end. Then if that is solid work, then it should flow through to funding opportunities through the various activity classes, walking, cycling, and obviously vehicles and public transport as a component of that.
I guess if it was a private business being set up, a private development, they would have to fund the traffic improvements in some significant way internally based on whatever consent. Because it's ministry, they seem to just have designations where they're not required to have any commitment to it.
It's a fair question. I do recall a rates inquiry into local government some years ago, which had 69 recommendations, and one of which was that public institutions pay rates for the very reason you're describing, because a private hospital or school will do that, and then you can use that money. We'll note that and take that up.
We're just going to run out of time, so I'm going to go to Mike because he's our spokesperson. He's our regional transport person. I will come back to you then.
Okay,
For God's sake, grow up.
Thank you, and thanks for this submission. It's actually really, really good. And I was going to ask about the travel management, but obviously it's been asked and answered. I was looking through your bit around the cycleway, and it's quite a very diplomatic response there. Would I read through that actually that you probably think it's a good idea for the council not to defer their cycleway program?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world we'd be moving that forward, and I guess with the opportunity of potentially more money through the GPS on the table, can we work together to see if we can assist you to bring that this way? And also there's always an opportunity for what's called front loading, where we give you a hire fare now and take it off you later on, and the General Manager Dave Adamson's rung me about that, so we're open to a conversation.
Well, I think there's some important conversations moving forward, especially if we want to go with the direction that the government is signalling. And obviously, although your contribution is really good, obviously it requires us to also put that contribution forward as well. But I'm also hearing that you're open for the discussion about light rail as well.
Well, light rail is in the context of the broader public transport system. What I'm expecting as a non-voting member of that Public Transport Committee is a report which identifies those opportunities and fairly puts forward the case one way or the other.
Right, Glenn.
Thank you. In terms of the green spine which Regen has announced, Jim, and activating that, and the other things you've said in relation to the schools and safety, etc. The Anzac Drive Bridge presents as a bit of an issue, and I just wonder what the status is with NZTA over that, particularly the access under the bridge, which is now not safe for pedestrians.
So this is relevant to our long-term plan for what reason?
For delivering the Avon or Takaro cycleway.
The green spine.
The green spine, and our mutual objectives with Regen.
A bit lost on that, but there you
I'm
go.
not sure I know the bridge approaches are damaged. In terms of our time frame for replacing it and possibly realigning it or doing something else with it, I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay, the underpass is half submerged, so I wonder what your plan is.
So it's not usable then. I'll come back to you when I can find out where that is.
Thanks.
Anne?
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Just looking at the Lincoln Road public transport, passenger transport improvement, Lincoln Road, and your suggestion that it is brought back into the LTP. We have a situation where we've got community boards that are supportive of this and community boards who are not supportive of this. And the reason they're not supportive is because they're afraid that four laning will destroy the Addington community going through there. What reassurance can you give us that that won't happen? That the actual public transport can you give us? Yeah, I mean,
Is that state highway?
Is that a fair question?
It's not state highway.
It's part of the submission. It's part of the submission, though. Yeah. So Jim's supports the proposed PT infrastructure program, with the exception of the timing of that he would like to consider. We would like CZ to consider bringing this project forward.
It's not a four-laning proposal.
Andrew can answer that.
Yeah.
It's a proposal for a bus priority.
Yeah.
So essentially that would be a council-led project still. The reason we're looking for it to be bringing forward is to support the public transport operation within Greater Christchurch, and also the fact that Hallsville was one of the rapid growing communities of Christchurch, and to support that growth we need the public transport facilities in place before the growth occurs to manage that in the long term. So essentially it would follow standard council procedures and processes to come up with the optimal design that is ultimately endorsed by community boards prior to any sort of construction.
So But this is the public transport project that you're referring to, not the...
The Lincoln Road widening, which has a component of one of the lanes is going to be turned into a bus priority lane.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Apparently one doesn't happen without the other.
Yes, correct.
So
Addington Village will be...
no, Addington Village doesn't get widened.
No.
That's right.
You can't put all the cars into a gridlock which is already there without doing something in Addington.
I
There
thought
might
the
be
extra lane was for a bus.
There might be other ways of doing it without widening the road.
But let's have that discussion because we're talking about full laning, but there's no discussion about Addington Village, which is the issue. It is, yeah, and no one's answered it and no one's discussed it. Thank
So how
you.
do we
No, but
get
we
to
will be
Addington?
discussing it as part of the LTP.
Well, we're not discussing it yet. I'll just leave it. It's
No,
not
well,
even my ward, you know.
I am confused because as I understand it, there is no four laning between,
Well, just,
is it? Between Whiteley and Morehouse.
yeah,
So, yeah, but I understood that the four laning was to enable the bus priority lane to go in.
so you get to Whiteley Ave,
Yeah,
and there is absolutely no discussion or planning on what happens from Whiteley, Barrington to Morehouse Ave. And that is the issue, because Whiteley, Barrington, Lincoln is already gridlocked. So if you're going to four lane from Wrights Road or wherever you go from Hallsville Road right up to Whiteley Ave, Barrington, Lincoln Road, you are just getting more vehicles to the same gridlocked spot.
Wrights Road is the racecourse.
No, sorry, to Whiteley Ave, sorry, Whiteley Ave.
David.
We'll get our design team to bring, but it is a priority lane, as we said, for public transport, because basically the buses are getting caught in the traffic, enable them to come down and then drop in front of that traffic. So it's not for any way relief of the congestion of the traffic, it's actually for congestion of the bus, which we hope will encourage people to get out of their car and into the bus, because that becomes, I can bike faster than I can actually bus from Hallsville at the moment. So
it's only for the buses.
correct.
It's not for
it's a public
cars.
transport project, correct.
Okay, so okay. Well, I need to
and we'll bring
understand
that
it
back.
more.
Can I
we
just
can bring
comment, the Sprayton Cashmere Community Board, just remind people, said they were quite fine with having a bus lane in there, yeah, as part of the transport system.
But it's about the
They
design.
did say they were opposed to widening of the road, but clearly there are other ways to put that bus lane in and keep traffic moving.
Right. So we need to understand that because, I mean, yeah. Yeah. But we haven't actually made the decision to widen Lincoln Road, have we?
But the community board just offered the $8 million back when they came in.
Yes, but it's not $8 million. It's not $8 million if you have to put in a bus lane. So, and the fact is that we have to put a bus lane on Lincoln Road. If we don't, then buses will get trapped, as they do now.
And it's reassurance of that community on the design, and we have not
And
been
how?
shown a design. Because all we've been speaking about and all we've
Okay.
been told is four laning of Lincoln
You've
Road.
started a massive row, Jim, and this is all your fault.
The tone unintended.
Yeah.
Aaron.
Yeah, so just around your public transport.
This is only because no one else has turned up. So.
Transport is important, but it's just around infrastructure. But infrastructure doesn't seem to get more people on buses. And I do note, whenever the school holidays are on, we don't have any traffic issues. In fact, if no one was driven to school, we would have probably by ourselves 30 to 50 years of traffic engineering. So have we considered a program where children, all school-age children in high school, go to school free on the bus? Or even if Christchurch trials it for a term and see if there's uptake. Has that been a consideration?
I haven't heard of it here or anywhere else. What I have heard is that there are different...
Well, the buses are already there. It's just the only real difference is the loss of revenue from the few kids that do catch the bus. But, you know, if we went out hardcore to all our children in Christchurch and said, hey, do you want to catch the bus for a term? It's going to be free. And just see how it goes, and then it could become the national model. But a lot of countries do it, and it works really well. We just, for some reason, haven't tried it.
But I think the issue you're raising is how do you incentivise different users to get on a bus, and that's more than school kids.
I'm just going to take one more question, Dion.
Because I did have a question before, but I thought it was going to get stopped. My question's around the infrastructure. You're saying it would be about 50 million and 45 million each year is money that NZTA is through partnership funding. In Christchurch, obviously, I mean, a lot of what you're saying is, yes, we're going to get people out of cars and, you know, that frees up congestion. But actually the question I have is actually about the wear and tear on the road and the actual infrastructure. And in Christchurch, the unique situation that we've got with the amount of heavy vehicles on the road, so it's not actually the cars that are causing most of the damage, it's you see a road laid and then a truck has done a U-turn out of a sort of thing where it's had construction material or demolition material, and it's ripping these roads up in record time. Is there any conversation that can be had with NZTA around increasing the road smoothing budget so that we can actually start sort of looking at this increased damage that we're having on our infrastructure, so that we can actually sort of have smooth roads and actually do all this other stuff as well, because it is one of the biggest things that people are talking to us about, and it is one of our biggest problems that we're trying to fix in the funding gap.
Well, the level of maintenance money is an ongoing discussion between ourselves and your staff. It's based around the condition of the network, it's based around the pressures that are on it, and it's based around the cost of fixing it. And the amount of money that you need is taken into account with what we assign to you. So we should be reflecting that. What I would say is that in terms of smooth travel exposure, Christchurch used to have the smoothest urban roads in the country, well ahead of anyone else for various reasons we don't need to go into here. The level that we would fund you to is based on the average, so that would be less a standard than you used to have, but ahead of where many of your roads are today. And your improvement program and your maintenance program, as I understand it, reflects that side from our budget. And recently we've just communicated those numbers to you.
Yeah, I mean, because the reality is that we're only re-smoothing 2% of our roads in a given year, and that road smoothing will last maybe 15 years or whatever, and actually we're expecting that road to last 50 years if we're going to have a 2% rotation. So I mean, we need to really together actually sort that problem out, because the increase of heavy vehicles, which is a result of the earthquake, is actually having an disproportionate amount of wear and tear on the roads is what you would normally get out of it as in a normal urban environment. And I think we actually need to really sort of nail that down and actually look at it and actually sort of send a signal to our communities to say, look, we're getting on top of this and we're going to sort it out.
Well, I'm not sure what the detail of your program is, but it should have taken those factors into account from our side as well.
I can confirm you're going to be communicated from our Chief Executive this week the numbers for your continuous program in the operation maintenance space, and it has increased significantly over your last 3 years as a result of the good work that your staff have done in that space. And there's also an opportunity to unlock further money from NZTA, but there is some conditions that go with that money, and we're working on putting a plan in place to undertake that to actually maximise your investment opportunities.
Correct.
Good news. All right, well, look, thank you very much for that. That's right. We might get some more. Okay, look, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're only 1 minute over the scheduled time for our break. So if we could be back here, just take a 15-minute break and be back here at